Summer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this all week.
I love that. And also that says something about how boring your week must be to hang out with another accountant. Guys, we were chatting for legit like a half hour before we even hit record, sharing war stories of audit days and public accounting. And I know you're going to really enjoy this episode because Summer and I come from a trauma-filled and wonderful career history. And I can't wait to introduce you guys. And Summer is also here with her team member, Malissa, both from the Dope CPA. Hi, guys. Melissa, say hi.
Hello.
Hello. And if you guys could just give us a little overview of your company and a bit of an introduction for both of you that they didn't hear in the formal introduction.
For sure. We'll do the behind the scenes intro. So Dope CPA, we started this back in November of 22. So we're a pretty new firm, but we've had substantial growth since we started. There's definitely a need for accountants in this space. So we saw the need and we decided to take the risk, take the leap. And as you know, accountants are typically conservative, risk averse. So taking the leap was a little scary at first. I mean, just starting a business is scary, but going into an industry that's regulated so harshly and still federally illegal is kind of sketch for accountants. But that's actually what attracted me to it. So we've had great growth so far and we're looking to expand. And so we offer an array of services. What we found is that our clients, they don't have a lot of financial experience or knowledge. So we try to come in, take over the entire accounting department. So that goes from payroll to accounting, bookkeeping, of course, and then outsource CFO services. So we come in, we take over all the financial heartaches and pain and take control of that so that the client can focus on what they do best, which is growing or selling cannabis.
Yep. Growing their business and growing their product. I love it.
Yes.
And so I have to ask, what made you guys lean into the cannabis industry specifically? Did you have like a special place in your heart for the industry? Any experience with it? You know, what was hey, I think we want to serve this group of entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't a one thing that hit me. And I was like, oh, I need to go into this. There's a few things that happened in my life. Growing up, my sister had cancer when she was 12. And I watched her go through excruciating pain and thinking there's ways to solve this, but it's illegal and we can't do it. And then in college, I did my minor in criminal justice. And of course, I'm a numbers person. Seeing the numbers don't lie. You can definitely see without a doubt that there are certain populations that are disproportionately affected by these punitive drug laws. And I remember thinking how terrible it was. And also helpless, like I didn't know how to help or what I could do as an accountant. And then simultaneously, I was in public accounting and getting burnt out, just getting sick of doing the whole corporate lifestyle and working for someone else and not seeing too much result. And so when this industry started emerging, it kind of was just a convergence of all of this. And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, this is the answer. This is the answer to all of that. This is how I can help. This is how people can get the medicine that they need. This is how providers of that medicine can get help from a financial professional, and I can provide that service to them. So, you know, when the world kind of points you in a direction, you're like, okay, this is what I needed. And so I've always wanted to be a business owner, and that thought's been in the back of my head. But this was definitely the thing where I was like, you know, a light bulb moment. This is it. So took that leap.
Yeah, I love that, you know, in my business as well. And for me, it was like fitness and, you know, digital entrepreneurs. It was more like I just noticed this like warm place in my heart for these people. And I said, they need help with their taxes or with the expertise that I have. And I love that we get to converge our two worlds together of the things that the people we like serving or the things we like to do and the thing that we're good at. Right. So say, hey, I have a unique skill and talent in this area or a knowledge base, and I can bring that to a certain population. It's like one of the most rewarding feelings to know that, hey, I can uniquely serve these people. And I think that's also what builds a great brand as well, when you can actually specifically say, like, you guys go by the Dope CPA. There is, you know, that's super clear about who you serve. And I just love the name too. And, you know, you said you started it in November 22. What provoked you to go off on your own and start your own firm?
So I was actually working part-time. So I worked for E&Y doing contracting work. And that's where I kind of built up the funds to save up to start my own business and have, 6 months of working capital before I have to sell the house. And then I was also working part-time for another firm that did reviews for startup companies seeking capital on crowdfunding platforms. And I remember doing the reviews of these companies, and they're seeking, $2 million, quite a bit of funding for small businesses. And they were a mess. The financials were a mess. And I remember struggling with like imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Do I have enough experience? And kind of going back and forth with that. And I think everybody struggles with that in some capacity. But when I saw these financials, I was like, I can definitely do better than that. So that's when it was like the moment where I was like, okay, I can definitely help out most of these, unregulated industries. So, cannabis is much more regulated. All I need to do is go in there, learn everything really quickly, and then I can help them.
Yeah. And one thing that I think we took away from that, we worked at the same firm. I don't know if we know if at the same time at any point, but what we do in these big firms, I don't know if you were the same experience I had, but basically you're told, hey, on Monday, you're going to be an expert on this. And you need to show up to this meeting and give this presentation on this particular thing. I'll never forget being handed a thing that says, hey, I need you to give a presentation on IFRS 9 next Thursday. And I'm like, what's that? And they're like, your job to figure it out. And that is like the greatest training on the planet is like, make me go figure it out and pull it all together. So I love that you have that background too. I actually want to shift into the industry, right? The cannabis industry. For you guys in working with your clients, what are some of the unique, I guess, situations for the cannabis industry? You mentioned regulation, which I'm sure is a huge chunk of it. So unpack for us, what is different about the cannabis industry than a typical small business, and what unique challenges do they face?
Yeah, for sure. So the biggest one, and it's always going to come up first, is 280E. That's the IRS regulation that says that cannabis, not specifically, but any federally illegal drug, if you're dealing in that, you can't claim any normal business expenses. And so for them, that is a lot. Really, all they can claim is cost of goods sold. And so for retailers, that's pretty much just whatever they buy. And it's a little different for manufacturers and cultivators, but it's pretty punitive, and it kind of ties their hands behind their back. And so the cash flow is of utmost importance, because towards year end, you see like this wash of companies that just weren't prepared to pay those taxes, especially like, and it's so painful to see like the mom and pop companies. They come towards end of year and they've got $150,000 tax bill and they don't know how to pay it. They don't have the cash. They've been reinvesting everything back into the business just to make ends meet. And, so 280E is such a punitive law to them. And I want to illustrate how terrible this law is to everyone that's not in the cannabis industry. Think about the expenses that you spend on your business: marketing, packaging, your professionals,
administrative office,
Yep.
personal development, education, materials, technology, things like that, right?
These cannabis companies cannot claim that. So that money's going out the door, and they're also being taxed on it. So look at your income statement, look at your gross profit, and that's what they're taxed on.
Oh, God. Because Lord knows, not that you need that much marketing probably for cannabis, but you probably, when you think about it, it's like, well, then they can't do a portion of their home, right? For the space that they're using. They can't, like a home office traditionally, they can't think about all the things that we talk about on the show, guys, that like now isn't available to them because so much of that is in the operating expenses line. Yeah.
So that's definitely number one biggest challenge. Melissa, were you saying something?
Just with payroll and rent, just those.
Oh, yeah, those are big expenses.
Yeah, and it hits hard.
So make sure I understand, because guys, I'm learning along with this. So when it comes to payroll, they can't deduct their payroll for employees?
Nope.
Not for strictly retailers. Now for cultivators and manufacturers, of course, they can do cost accounting. So some of that can go into inventory, which will eventually flow out when they sell that inventory. But that's a complicated accounting procedure, which is why they need someone that specializes in this industry.
Oh, for sure. I can't imagine a small business owner understanding, I know, guys, this is complicated stuff when you have to take a portion of the payroll and, use it as part of the cost of everything you sell, that is super complicated and usually reserved for large corporations who have really complex manufacturing. So that is definitely an intense, type of accounting for, say, a mom and pop or a solopreneur who's just trying to do this on their own. So that's a really good point, Summer. And then rent as well. Again, rent is not deductible. That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts.
Especially in some of the metropolitan places where they're spending $50K a month on their rent. Yeah, they can't deduct that.
That's crazy. Yeah, I agree. That is a ridiculous law if they can't do that. Let's see, what types of success factors are there for the industry when it comes to, the financial management, right? Because you just mentioned they can't deduct a lot of stuff. So how do they, it begs the question, why get into this business? If it's going to be I feel like there's just this huge headwind, right, going against you. What are the ways that somebody can overcome that challenge or be really successful with their business despite these unfavorable tax laws?
Oh man, I have so many answers and so many directions I can go in here. So what's going to make them successful? I think you have to plan, and you have to plan long term. In the startup industry, it's hard. It's hard if you're selling a product, and you really need a strategic partner guiding you. So before you even embark on the endeavor, I would say you need to look out 3 to 5 years and budget for that. And it sounds so basic, but it's going to come in clutch. Like, you need to know where you're going, and you need to know when you're going to break even, and you need to know how much you're going to spend, especially in this industry, and probably in any specialized industry where, you're not sure. And, from experience, that businesses don't necessarily turn a profit until maybe year 3, if they're lucky. And so I've seen some cannabis businesses that we have under our umbrella do really well, and they are net positive, but it shouldn't end there. That's not the end goal. You really have to shoot for 5 years and see, okay, where are we going? What are our goals? Are we going to try to be acquired? Are we going to try to have a really high valuation later on down the road? Or are we going to try to expand and control the market here? So I think one thing to focus on is the business owner's goals. And then my goal for them is always consistent positive cash flow, because that's what's going to keep them running. So we try to talk about those goals early and often, and figure out what do we need to do? Because those are big goals. So we have to break those down. What do we need to do this year to make that goal attainable? And then what do we need to do this month to stay on track for that goal? So we have to look at the big picture and then break that down even further, and then break that down even further, so that the business owner can take actions every month to get a little bit closer to that goal. And I think that's one of the things, right? Like, this from experience, and I know this from experience, is it's overwhelming. You are everything for the business. You're the marketing department. You answer customer queries. You're building your brand. And then you're also providing the service, or they're providing the good. So it's really overwhelming. And I remember when I first started thinking, okay, I have time today. What do I spend it on? Do I do this? Do I do that? And there's so many ways you can do that. So I think for the people we serve, we really have to take the financial part and take that burden off of them and guide them in the right direction. And so why do people get into this industry? A lot of them they've been directly impacted by the cannabis laws, or there's a few different stories. So one of my clients is a nurse, and she really just has a heart for helping people, and her business has done well because of it. I read her reviews. She does great. Everybody loves her. And that's her brand. Her brand is she cares, and she's providing a medicine. And then some people want to provide generational wealth for their family, and they don't necessarily realize how hard it's going to be. And so they have, second mortgages on their homes. They've definitely put skin in the game. And so that is some of the motivational factors. But more often than not, I would say they've been in the legacy market for a long time, and they're looking to go straight, I guess is what you would call it. Try to put your hand in the legal market, and hopefully make some money. We're actually, and we talked about this before we hopped on, but the HHS actually urged the Biden administration to reschedule cannabis to Schedule 3. So if that happens, then hopefully my clients would not have such a heavy tax burden this year, and they would have a lot more money than we anticipated, which would be wonderful.
Can you educate our folks listening, including myself, on, like, when you say reschedule to Schedule 3, like what's the range? What does the schedule mean? What does this actually mean for someone who isn't familiar with the law?
Yeah. So right now, cannabis is currently Schedule 1, and that's up there with heroin, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so the HHS hasn't said what schedule they think it should be on, but there's been talks of it going to Schedule 3 or Schedule 4, which is one of the least problematic drugs or drugs that you would need a prescription. So Schedule 3 has things like ketamine, steroids, testosterone, things that you can't necessarily get, but you need a prescription for. And so the ramifications of that would be that 280E would go away. It's no longer Schedule 1, but the state program still wouldn't be in compliance with that, right? Like they're selling to people who have a medical license. It's not necessarily prescription. So it's kind of hard to predict what the fallout from that's going to be.
Gotcha. So the higher the schedule number, the more regulated, the more intense, the more, I guess the more restricted the drug is.
Backwards. So Schedule 1 is like the highest or the most addictive, most problematic drug.
Most addictive, problematic. Yeah, that's what I mean. So it's like the most, like, we don't like these.
Yeah.
Like they basically unfavorable
Heroin.
treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Heroin.
Like heroin. Not a big fan. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. Yeah.
Don't recommend it.
No.
Yeah.
And then, but what's insane to me is that cannabis, marijuana, is in that category still.
Yes.
Insane. I do not equate those two things whatsoever.
I think that cannabis is not a drug at all. Like it shouldn't even be it shouldn't even be scheduled. So
yeah,
it is ridiculous that it's up there with heroin.
That's nutty. And when you think about it, it's like, that doesn't make any sense, but Lord knows lawmakers, guys, I don't know what they're thinking with some of this stuff. A lot of it is following the money trail. A lot of it is something motivated other than the logic of it. But I totally agree. And the fact that dictates tax law is really interesting too.
Yeah.
That's a unique challenge, that cannabis business owners face. And I think also, I just want to make sure that even if you're not in this business, have an appreciation for what Summer's saying and understand that a lot of people are starting these businesses and are faced with a lot of these headwinds of regulation and of tax law that's really unfavorable to them. So, maybe don't try to haggle on the prices.
Yeah. Yes, they definitely. So they have to make their margin up somehow. And unfortunately, they're being taxed to death. And that falls back onto the consumer. So just keep that in mind when you're shopping around.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, and I did want to make a plug. If you're listening to this and you think it's ridiculous that, marijuana and heroin are on the same schedule, there's an organization called NORML, NORML, and they help push regulation in the direction of cannabis legalization and descheduling.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I want to shift over into a bit about your brand as well, because I can't ignore the fact that you have effectively niched down really well. And I want to talk about how that decision to go really specialize in a certain industry has benefited your business, has contributed to your ability to grow your firm, and how you've used it to attract either really good clients or really good talent in your company.
Yeah. So like I said, we decided to pick cannabis because my life was just kind of funneling into that area and everything was kind of pointing in that direction. But I will say, like, we were talking about audit earlier, and you get thrown into one in manufacturing, and then you've got government, and then you've got not-for-profits, and you're constantly on this, like, trying to learn to catch up to audit these companies effectively. And I remember thinking, if I could just only audit one industry, I feel like I would be so much better at this. And so I think when people talk about niching for success in your business, it's so true. There's just no other way to become an expert. You can't be an expert at everything. And even within my firm, we have to outsource the tax planning part, the tax planning and prep, because my background's in audit. So I'm much better at doing like the accounting and CFO work, but I don't touch the tax. I mean, I know a little bit, enough to be dangerous, of course, but there's still specialization within even our little small niche. And it's a full-time job, even keeping up with that. So if you want to be an expert in something, you really have to choose a direction and walk in it. And that's scary, right? Because if I choose this direction, I'm not choosing that direction, and the opportunity cost, and I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. But man, it definitely it's helped us gain trust from the people that we work with. and the people that choose to go with our firm, because they know that we're like all of our time is being spent on cannabis. We eat, drink, smoke, live cannabis. So we're going to be in the know about what's going on in the industry. And I definitely, as advice, and this is not going to be just for cannabis, but in any highly regulated, highly specialized industry, this advice is going to be the same. Like if you're choosing an accountant or a bookkeeper, you really need to find someone that's focused on your industry. Now, there's some that are pretty general, right? And the bookkeeper can be a generalist, but there's some industries you really shouldn't go to a generalist. If you've had to hire a lawyer, are you going to go to a family practice lawyer for litigation? No.
Yeah. Or doctors or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
like, I look at it as, is there anyone uniquely positioned to solve the problems you have? And the problems you have may be related to your industry or they may not be. And I think that if your problem is cash flow in general, there are tons of people who are uniquely positioned to help you with cash flow. But if you can find someone who is uniquely positioned to help with cash flow for your industry, even better. Because now they know what other companies have been through. They know what to expect from you. They know what the industry outlook is, and they can absolutely help you. But I do agree that there are some times where a generalist is okay, especially if you have problems that are not unique necessarily or are something that most accountants or professionals can solve for. But there is always an opportunity to get more value out of having someone with an industry expertise. Totally agree. And then, so I would love to know what your outlook is for the cannabis industry. Where do you think it's going? And what are you, I guess, like, it can go either way, right? What are you excited about helping business owners with in the future? Where are you heading with the industry? Where is the industry going? And overall, how are you planning on serving them as you grow your business?
Oh man, that's a lot of questions. Well,
Let's just think future focus. What's going on?
Okay. I'll start with where the industry is going, and that is highly unpredictable. It looks like, I think with this HHS recommendation, Biden's trying to make one last ditch effort to leave his mark. He promised student loan forgiveness and that didn't pan out. So now it's like, all right, can we push marijuana? Can we get that rescheduled? So I don't want to try to predict the future, but if he wants to leave a mark, this may be what he's trying to push. If so, we don't know if that's positive or negative and how that's really going to impact the clients I serve right now. Like ultimately, it'll be good on cash flow because they won't have 280E looming over their heads this year, maybe next year. But then we're really not sure about the state program repercussions and how that's going to play out. So that's a little scary, just not knowing where that's going to end up. And right now, there's 38 states, maybe 39, that are legalized. And so there are basically 39 different economies. And those all kind of live in like little silos. And so I think eventually the market's going to open up and there will be more cross-border commerce. There will be more SOs. And then, of course, if 280E is lifted like from this rescheduling, then there's going to be more money flowing into cannabis. People have had a thirst to invest in cannabis, but it hasn't yielded the returns that they were expecting. So that's kind of dried up. But if this goes away, I definitely expect to see more cash flow in the industry. What were the other questions?
And then what would you say based on that, where do you see your firm helping them with that, right? So, if kind of your outlook comes to fruition or depending on what kind of happens in your predictions, how do you see yourself serving your clients in the future as the industry evolves?
So I think if there's more money flowing in, we're going to see people that they're wanting to get more valuations. They're going to want to see where their business stands in respect to other businesses in the state. Maybe some businesses will sell out. There might be some consolidation in the cannabis industry if people are selling, like some of those smaller mom and pops, if they put their life savings in there and they've been holding on by a thread, then maybe they're looking to sell. So for us, how that's going to play out in our firm, we definitely want to be in alignment with our clients' goals. And if that's what they want to do, then, we'll set them up for that. We'll walk them through the process. We'll be there, basically as their partner going through whatever goals they have, if they want to sell or if they want to grow, if they want to continue to compete, then that's another thing that we can do and help with.
Awesome. And overall, Summer, thank you so much for all of your knowledge and your resources on this whole industry. But I know you have something coming up next week. Can you talk a little bit about that and tell our listeners where they can find out more about you if they're interested in working with you or interested in referring someone that they know into working with you?
Yeah. So we're hosting our first free webinar. It's going to be October 17th at 10 o'clock. It's a Zoom. It's absolutely free. And it's called Gain Control of Your Cannabis Business Finances. And even if you're not in the cannabis industry or you know someone that is, these recommendations are going to be pretty similar throughout industries. We will tailor it a little bit to cannabis and the different nuances within this industry, but a lot of the advice is going to be very universal. And so if you have anyone, any friends, family, etc., that they're in the cannabis industry and they need a specialist, you can reach out to me. It's summer@dopecpa.org. And, I will say our price point, we're probably not lowest. We're probably not highest. We're in the mid-range, but we do have access to several other accountants and bookkeepers that specialize in cannabis. And I never want to see a client go away without service. So even if we do like a right fit call and it's not a fit, we will do everything in our power to make sure that you do get service.
I love that. We do the exact same thing. That's why we have our recommendations page on our website too. We have all our recommended providers in case we're not in a position to serve them. So again, guys, go to dopecpa.org and also check out Summer's webinar. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can register and you can attend if you'd like to. Summer, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.